here we are, S.A.L.T, and it's Saturday, May 27, I think. Yes, May 27. Yes. And here we are.
Getting older by the minute.
Yep.
By the second. By the day, literally.
I'm sitting here trying to share around. Ah, it's on. Yay! Yes. Things seem to be working.
It's Brett and mine's birthday weekend this weekend.
Yes, it is. It has been, it starts on the 24th and goes to the 29th.
Yes. So Brett's already celebrated his birthdays on Wednesday and Friday, and so we'll celebrate my birthday on Monday. So I guess technically it's not a weekend, but it is over the Memorial Day weekend thing. So. And
Autumn's is on the 24th. That's our son's wife. Our daughter-in-law is on the 24th, and
Brett and Autumn share a birthday.
Yep, and it's always a fun time to meet when people who don't know me or who have forgotten, to remind them I don't know when I was born. If you haven't heard that story, if you know me and you haven't heard that story, so when I was a kid, we celebrated my birthday on May 26th for the first 12 years of my life. And then I was going to get a job when I was 13. And so in South Carolina in 13, back then you could get a job. How old are you, Aspen? 16, no job. Anyway, when I was 13, I was getting a job. And we went to get my Social Security card, and you had to have your birth certificate. So on my birth certificate, we got it, and I was entering it, and it looked like on the birth certificate it said May 24. And I was like, Mom, what's this all about? And she tried to blow it off. Oh, it's nothing. It's, they made a mistake. And but the hospital says I was born on May 24, and my mom swears up and down I was born May 26. And I asked my dad, father of my life, when was I born? He said, I don't know, August sometime. So he was no help. And we never did sell it. Back then, hospitals, typed everything on old typewriters, so it's possible they made a mistake. And it's also like I wasn't born like at midnight or anything, it was like 3 in the afternoon. And it's a little more understandable if it's like one day or the next, 24, 25, 23, 20. But there's a whole weekend in between, the 24th and the 26th. So I guess I put the 24th on everything legal, and the 26th is the emotional birthday, and
It's true, but we celebrate both just to make sure we're getting
covering
it right.
both bases. And if you saw the earlier post, Aspen and Miranda have tried over the years valiantly to make a dessert, because my favorite cake of all time was yellow cake with chocolate icing.
Yes, which was easy to do pre-diabetes.
Pre-diabetes.
Yes.
They even nailed it. It was my grandmother made the best, I thought, and my mom made it really good. And I don't remember what year it was, but you nailed it one year. You finally got it.
One was like pound cake.
Yeah.
Was that it? Maybe.
Because the icing was kind of thick and melty, when my grandma made it, and you guys did that one year, and it worked everything.
We did find a really good chocolate frosting recipe that we liked. Yes, I do like chocolate frosting.
And now it's gone forever. Well, all gone. No more. Because this year's effort, valiant as it was, failed miserably as cake, but was a wonderful cornbread.
Yes, it's funny how the ingredients were basically almond flour, eggs, a little stevia, and salt, I suppose, and and turns out that it tastes like cornbread, basically.
Yeah, Aspen made some
and the same texture as well.
Icing on it.
Yes.
And I was like, ooh, and the icing was good, and on cornbread though, and then later you put it with black-eyed peas and burger, and it was like perfect. It was like, wow, this was real. So we stumbled upon very good cornbread.
Yes, and it had basically no carbs.
No.
And
the icing by itself was really good. So by itself, it was good.
Well, we kind of whipped it up with some whipped cream and
But it's tough to come up with diabetes.
Yeah, so if anybody out there has a keto yellow cake chocolate frosting recipe that's actually good, like you have tried this and you know that it's good, then we would like to just go ahead and go straight from 0 to 100, like that. So it would be very nice. Brett would appreciate it a lot. So would me and Aspen, because... But
I've already given up hope. I've already
we didn't mind, though, finding the cornbread recipe.
No, that was actually really good.
Because it's all like one piece was all of like 3 carbs or something. So that
was really good.
That's a win, yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know what regular cornbread would be, but that's something I like.
Probably a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, one slice of regular bread is about 20 carbs, give or take. So that adds up a lot.
Yeah. So kudos to Aspen or was that Aspen? Did she come up with the cake thing?
Yes, Aspen found the cake thing. So, what did I do? I did the what?
Alfredo.
Oh, yes, the Alfredo,
chicken Alfredo. That was good.
Yeah, I did find a good low carb Alfredo sauce recipe.
Because it was chicken Alfredo and whatever kind of noodles those were. What are those?
Shells?
Shells, yeah. Shell noodles. So that was really good. And then we're going out to we're going to Dublin for Miranda's birthday.
Oh yes, Dublin.
Because she's always wanted to visit
part
Dublin.
Irish.
Yeah,
so
there you go. Yeah, Dublin, Texas.
Yeah.
And we're not sure what all's there, but it looked like there was stuff right around it, and I don't know. We have a brochure about it, and Miranda found it, and
yeah, it's we're trying to do some historical stuff nearby.
Yep. And Aspen's out of school. Keep you updated. Aspen took all her tests. She passed without cheating.
That's right. Yes, and it reminds me of throughout the school year. Aspen has friends, and they tell her stuff.
And she didn't tell me any of this. I'm very disappointed. You didn't tell me any of the cheating stories.
Okay, so they tell her stuff, and a couple times, I think this was the same girl. She needed to take a test last minute, and she hadn't studied, and so she did what she called old schooling it. She literally took and wrote these answers, possible answers, on her arm with a pen, and then did this.
And no teacher saw this?
And when the teacher's not looking, she literally looked.
How do you not see this as a teacher? Oh my gosh.
I don't know how that happened, but...
Teacher not paying attention, that's what it is.
Yeah, it's what?
Something I didn't mention is that I may have helped her.
How?
I wrote down some of the answers on her other arm.
Oh, wow. She'll use both arms.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay.
So now Aspen is a cheater. And here we had high hopes for our daughter, but no more.
No, Aspen said once she could have cheated because she was taking a test after, like weeks after. And she was in the room alone. The teacher was in his office. And she said she could have cheated, but she decided not to. But this last week being test week and all, there was another guy who cheated. Now, I mean, the old school way, I don't know, I guess clearly it has worked for a long time. Because I remember people talking about it. I mean, I didn't really think people did that stuff. They talked about it, but who would have thought you'd actually do that? I guess personally I was too afraid to get caught doing something like that.
Yeah.
It just seemed too obvious or something, I don't know. But, anyway, so there was that, the old school way, okay? But there was a guy in one of Aspen's classes. Did he actually do this year? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So he did this year, oh dear, during test week. And so all the students have a Chromebook. And they take their tests on their Chromebook. And so the test is open on his Chromebook. And so... when you're finished, you get to close up your Chromebook and leave, right? So the teacher just automatically presumes that you are done taking your test. Well, turns out he decided that what he would do is leave the test open and up on his Chromebook, close it as if he's finished, walk out into the hall, and open it back up, and then there he would have the answers and be able to just finish the test. And it was rather genius, wasn't it?
No.
I mean,
again, these are stupid teachers, not smart students. I don't know how a teacher allows that to happen. You get up out of my classroom, you're done with your test, and if it's on a laptop or something like the Chromebook and stuff, I'm going to sit there, and as soon as you leave, I'm going to check and say submitted. And if it's not submitted, then it's an easy F. because you got up and left without finishing.
Brett is not that mean. He really
Mean.
isn't. He really isn't. He is so merciful to his students. Of course, I don't know that he has any necessarily cheating like that.
Oh no, I've had cheatings.
Okay.
I've had cheatings, although it's usually it's so bad. It's I don't get mad at it. I make fun of them. So like I've had kids this last year or year before. Anyway, I'll have worksheets and they won't go to the textbook. They'll go to Google and they'll try and look up the answers on Google, and they might get in the same universe of the topic we're on, but it's obvious it's not an answer from the textbook. So I just bring them in and I'm just like, wow, you are really acting very not smart. This is all Google answers. How can you possibly think? You must think I'm stupid. You think I'm stupid, don't you? And they're like, no, yes, you really think I'm dumb. No, I don't. Because otherwise you wouldn't do this. Because only an idiot would fall for this. And then I make them do it again.
Right,
So,
see, he just makes them do it again. He doesn't
after I
fail.
humiliate them, which is the part I get to enjoy.
Right, but anyway, so he's very kind. He always allows them extra credit if they choose to bring up their grade and things like that.
Yeah, I'm a pushover.
So, anyways, talking about...
I'd have kicked you out, though, writing answers on someone else's arms. It's like, you're going to assist? You're going to help out? Boom! F for you, too.
She couldn't read my handwriting.
Yeah, actually, all right, never mind. I wouldn't have. Had knowing you and having read your homework and knowing what your penmanship is like, I would have been, you help. Actually, you probably really didn't. And yeah, I'd have
she
let
probably
you go.
would have gotten the wrong answer
Probably
trying
would
to read what
I'd have caught her. Because she'd have been like, what? What is,
Yeah.
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 Anyway, cheating. Cheaters never prosper. That's today's topic.
Yes. So we all know the one big cheater, deceiver story in the Bible. Well, I'm sure there's more than one, but this one in particular was Jacob, right? When he deceived his father and received the birthright. Now, the name Jacob there in the Bible, it means one who grabs the heel, or one who trips up, one who supplants.
And why does it mean one who grabs the heel? Here, I'm gonna help ask him.
Because when he was born second, and he was apparently grasping the heel of his older brother Esau.
Yeah, they knew when he was born.
Yeah,
Because his mom cared. But no, do we know when I was born? I'm sorry.
Okay, so the
Keep
funny
going.
thing is they weren't particularly creative with their name, because Esau. Hello again.
Oh, Aspen has done it wrong. Switch to one of the cameras, and I'll help you with this one.
So Esau's name meant hairy. Why? Because as a baby he was born hairy. And so they named him Esau, and then of course because Jacob was grasping onto his heel, they just named him Jacob, which means grasping onto the heel.
That's how their names were supposed to have significant meaning or some sort of meaning to their lives, either how they were born or how they looked when they came out, like these and other things. What would yours have been?
Mine. I don't know. My mom said after I was born, all the nurses told her how cute her baby was.
Ah, cute, huh?
That's what she said.
I won a beautiful baby contest. Or so I'm told.
Did you receive your kiss? Mwah.
That's right. I never saw the award. My mom might just be making the whole thing up to make up for not remembering my birthday. But she told me that at some point I did. I was going to say yours would have been something about Brainiacus, because she loves to take tests in high school, and she's like, oh, let's take more tests.
Well, it was more fun than doing homework.
Yeah.
Homework is pretty boring.
Yeah.
At least a test, you study for it, you take it, and then you're done.
That's true. That's true.
So
I was not a test taker.
Right, so basically, if you're a punster, this was not my pun, but I found it online. I thought it was kind of clever. Basically, if you're a punster, Jacob might just as easily mean trickster, basically, and it lends itself to an unusual but common English pun.
He acted like a heel.
Yeah, how did you know that? Did you read my notes?
I did. I read your notes. It was. I thought I should have thought of that. Jacob, you heel.
Yes, a heel. Someone who treats someone else badly.
Aspen, you can use that in school now. You heel grabber. Yeah, never mind. They'll make fun of you. Anyway. Yes, so Jacob was a heel grabber and a trickster. And that certainly wasn't just how he was born, but it was also prophetic of his life.
Right. And I mean, he didn't trick his brother out of his birthright. He sold it to his brother. And yet, in the end, when he did have to lie to his father, of course, and
well, he sort of tricked him.
Well,
he knew his brother's personality was like, so, you know, he didn't value the birthright, and he knew, like, oh, he's so hungry, I can get him for a bowl of soup, and, you know, so he kind of, you know, manipulated his brother in that way.
He did manipulate him. He had to think about that.
Yeah, he didn't think about much, anyway, about the consequences of what his brother would do to him later.
Yeah, like pound on him or something.
Well, yeah, because I did that to my brother once. It wasn't for a bowl of soup, though. We were walking around the lake. We used to live at Lake Murray, South Carolina, and it was way back in the day when you could just, your parents would, like, you know, feed you breakfast and kick you out the door during the summer and said, don't come home till dinner, and we'd play out all day. Well, this was actually in the wintertime. We were walking around the cove, which was what we did when we didn't have anything else to do, and we came across a boat ramp. People lived on the lake, had the cement boat ramps that would just go right into the lake, and it was iced over, and we were crossing, and he slipped and, you know, started sliding down the boat ramp, and he grabbed onto a little old dead piece of vine that was coming out of one of the cracks in the cement, and he's like, Brad, help, put me out, because, you know, the icy waters. And so I just stood there and just contemplated the advantageous position I happened to find myself in. And so when I went and I reached my hand out, and I knew he would do this, he reached one hand up to reach my hand, and then I grabbed the little vine and pulled it out of the crack, and he went, into the lake. Which was, and it was, in the moment, it was a wonderful, heartwarming rush. And then I had to run home, and then I started thinking about what my life was going to be like for the next few hours. And
for the next few hours, like for the rest of your life, maybe?
Yes, yeah. Actually, I stood outside. I hid behind one of the trees because he had to get himself out of the lake. Yeah. So he came running, and he ran past. You know, he didn't see me. He thought I was already inside. He ran inside, and I just stood out in the yard. And I must have been there, I don't know how long, till Mom came out. You know, come in, and no, he's going to pound me. And so I stayed close to Mom for the rest of the night. And then I'm sure I was probably several days later he did something to get me back. But yeah, my actions caused my life for the next few days to be full of dread and fear.
Yeah. So basically, you know, so first of all, God did not promise Jacob the birthright.
Yeah, I thought that was you mentioned that. That's not something I read, so I think we all think that it's somehow Jacob and his mom thought he was going to get the birthright, that God said, and he will have the birthright, but you said that's not true.
That's not exactly what God said. I mean, apparently the twins, before they were born, were roughing and tumbling inside of her, and she wondered, like, what's going on? And so God said, well, you know what? You're going to have twins, basically, and the older will serve the younger. And that's what God said. The older will serve the younger.
And she must have taken that.
Yeah, taken that as he would receive the birthright.
Yeah.
And, of course, Jacob was her favorite son, and Esau was the father's favorite son. And it's much like misunderstandings that, like, take, for example, the Jewish people in general, but the disciples, when they were following Jesus, part of it was they believed that Jesus would sit on an earthly throne, and they would rule with him, and all of a sudden they would go from being poor fishermen with not much respect from anybody to being well-respected, wealthy people.
Yeah.
And this was a misunderstanding that they had, and even because the Bible didn't say that in particular, but they wanted to believe that, and so they did.
Yeah.
And so,
you know, you could look at this sort of like Abraham and Sarah.
How's that?
Well, God said Sarah was going to have a baby,
right, yeah.
and then didn't have it, and they were like, well, how is this ever going to happen?
Yeah.
This must be what God meant. We'll do it this way. And instead of, trusting God to say this is what was going to happen, letting him do it, they were like, oh, it must mean this. Well, we'll do it, and we'll help God out. And that's what she did. She's like, well, that must mean he gets the birthright. Well,
right.
We'll have to help God do that.
Yes, we'll definitely have to help God do that. Because I would guess that quite possibly she may have mentioned to Abraham that Jacob should get the birthright and whatnot. So when the time came, and it was clearly she had overheard Isaac telling Esau to go get a meal and whatever so that he could give him the birthright. She's like, oh my goodness, we got to do something. We got to do it right now. And of course, Jacob actually didn't really want to. He's like, oh, we're going to have to lie to Dad. And she's like, oh, no, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. That's what we got to do. And so he went ahead with the plan, which he regretted, clearly, probably the rest of his life. But, so anyways, there were plenty of other ways, I got to thinking about it, that God could have, Esau could have received the blessing, the birthright, and the older could have still served the younger, technically speaking, right? Okay, so these are just a couple of my own thoughts on God's wisdom in doing something like that. It certainly far surpasses ours. But possibly, you know what? Like God did to Balaam when he went out to curse the Israelites. He couldn't curse the Israelites. God put words of blessing into his mouth for the Israelites instead. And so God could have very well done the same thing for Isaac. He could have just put the different words in his mouth for his sons. Possibly. I mean, I'm just saying that is not too hard for God to do things his way.
I think historically we get in big time trouble if you kind of look back at all of human history, and anytime it's like, well, this God wills this and we're off to do it, like when England decided the Middle East needed to be conquered for Christianity, God wills it, and off they go to fight the Holy Wars. And the Catholic Church decided that God hates heretics, kill them all, God wills it. Usually not a good combination when we start going, well, this is what God must have meant, and off we go to do it. And I said, instead of like, if you have to do something that is questionable, deceitful, wrong, to bring about God's will, it's probably a clue that you're not really seeing, what God's true intent is. If you have to do something like Jacob's mom, it'll be fine. This is what God wants, so we'll just have to trick old Jacob into doing it. That should be a clue. It's like, maybe not so much.
Yeah. Or possibly Esau, even if he would have received the birthright, quite possibly God could have blessed Jacob more financially than he did Esau. Even though Esau may have inherited it all, it would not have been a problem for God to bless him financially. Just like when he went, he had to leave the country for fear of being killed by his brother. When he went there, God blessed him financially. He kept working on his behalf.
I mean, there's all kind of, what ifs,
Yeah.
You could play. But, yeah, there was an infinite possibilities God could have used to bring his will about, and probably had in mind, that didn't involve deceit and sending Jacob on the long roundabout journey to learn his lessons that he ended up having to do.
Right. And so we're going to skip part of the story. We're going to, no, we're skipping it. But anyways, moving on. Our number one thing God created us to do is to live out a loving relationship with him and to trust him. See, they weren't exactly trusting him. Rachel and Jacob weren't trusting God at that point in time. See, God said it, so therefore it is God's job to do it. And they weren't letting God do what he said was going to happen. because in reality, they couldn't really make that happen. They couldn't make Esau serve Jacob unless by some force, which they really didn't have. Their only hope was to get the birthright to make that happen. And even then, it didn't really happen. They couldn't make that happen.
No, that's the thing. If you look at it, so here they did all this deceit to, get the birthright, because that's what, Jacob's mom thought, oh, the birthright, and everything will be okay. And, for her, that was the end goal. So the end goal is get the birthright for the right son, and everything will be right. That was her end goal. And that, if you look at it realistically, after all, he had to run away, had to go live with his, uncle, and they had the 2 different marriages, which may not have happened, if he'd have done it God's way, then, he may not have ever had to marry, what's her name? Sarah, June, Leah, yeah. And, all that stuff. But, after all of that, just to get the birthright, he ended up he didn't have the birthright anyway.
No,
he did all that, and it really didn't get him anything except, this huge detour. Yeah. Which, God knew the detour was coming, so God had it all planned out and everything. But, there was always a plan B, a plan C. There was always something else that, God can take us, and that's what Jacob ended up having doing. And 20 years later, he comes around, and, he still didn't have the birthright. God still, did what he said he was going to do anyway, which is, he blessed Jacob and he held his possession, he can't brought him back. And,
right. And he certainly gave Jacob a financial birthright in a sense, but it was not through inheriting it from his father.
Right.
Because essentially Esau had all of that stuff.
He
was there. He was there for those 20 years. Of course he took over that kind of stuff. But what Esau wasn't interested in was the spiritual side of that.
Yeah, the spiritual leadership.
And Jacob was very interested in the spiritual leadership part of that. And so he was able to come back to his home country and to have the spiritual leadership of his family.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I guess we're seeing the whole, where he was he worked for his uncle, and he, had the 2 marriages. So he had 2 wives, and he had all these possessions because, God blessed his efforts and his work while he was working, for his uncle. And he brings him back now. He's coming back, and he's got all this stuff with him. And that's when he, he knows he's about to meet his brother. He knows, think that could be it. His brother's going to kill him, for what he did all those years ago. And all that stuff now, is behind him. All his possessions, all his everything is nothing, because we go into the night where he then spends the night wrestling with God.
Right. So basically, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. We're to trust in God with all our heart and lean not on our own understanding. And we're to submit to him in all of our ways, and then he makes our paths straight for us.
Which is what he's about to do with Jacob.
Right. Yes. And anyways, it's more about the journey than it is about the destination. When Jacob ran away, he had a destination, right?
Well, think of it this way. And we don't even see the journey. We see what we think is the destination. Like Jacob and his mom saw getting the birthright was the destination. It wasn't. It was the beginning of a long journey.
Yes, it was the beginning of a long journey. Probably either way, but all the same. So when Jacob ran away, he had a destination. Now this was his Uncle Laban's place, right? But it was a journey that gave him the direction for his whole life, because God showed up in this dream. And basically he gave him the very same promises that he gave to Abraham.
Yeah. He was content. I mean, it was the same promise. He promised Abraham, you're going to be the father of many nations, da-da-da-da. Well, he didn't mean, next year, eventually. So the promise he gave Abraham, he was continuing to fulfill through Abraham's descendants, and Jacob, was his turn.
Right. And so that was on the way out. And then, he gets out there and he's lied to, and he's cheated basically out of stuff. And yet God still blesses him.
It was learning
and is
for him.
Working. What's that?
It was learning for Jacob.
Yes, and it was working things out according to God's plan, and certainly nothing that Jacob did.
I mean, even in all the stuff that was happening to Jacob, God was still working as well. And he was still, even though he was out there and, Jacob was living not plan A, God was still blessing him and teaching him and bringing his will through him, albeit through a different, route. But God was still true, faithful, and trying to teach Jacob, wherever you go, whatever you do, I'm the one you can really trust.
Right, and I find it interesting that basically, his father-in-law had been cheating him and everything, and so God shows up in a dream and he says, I see how you're being treated. Now I want you to go back home to this land that I have promised you, and take your wives and your children and all your flocks and animals and all this stuff, and go back, and I will be with you. And so on the way back, of course, is when he ends up spending the night wrestling with God. And he spends the night fighting with all he has, right? And yet in the end, when God touches his hip and puts it out of joint, that all of a sudden he realizes who this is. And before, while he was fighting this being, he was putting everything he had into it. And yet in reality, he's arrived to the point where he realizes that it's not what he's doing, it is what God is doing for him. Because God is there. God blesses him at that point in time, and he gives him a new name.
So he spends the entire night, and we've talked about it in Sabbath school and different places, and it's like there was this physical struggle, and so Jacob had to come to the end of his physical strength, in this wrestling. But it was not just that; he also came to the end of his emotional strength and his spiritual strength. He had to come to a place where he fought God all night long, which is really kind of symbolic of the way he fights God all through his life. And God's wrestling until he has absolutely nothing left, and he's basically clinging to the being, just because he can't do anything else, he can't fight anymore,
right? And
then at that point God touches his hip and breaks it out. Now he's really undone and has absolutely nothing. All his stuff, all his possessions, all his efforts, all his everything is now completely gone. And that's the place God brought him to before he brought him back home. He brought him to a place of nothingness, of zero, so that he would then cling to him again, instead of this time out of desperation for, I have nothing else to fight, cling to desperation for, you're the only thing I have left, bless me. And then God does change his name, and that was the turnaround. That was the place, that things really turned around for Jacob. But it was only at that place where he had absolutely nothing left, emotionally, spiritually, physically, nothing.
Right. And we too are to arrive to that point of realizing that we can do nothing. We have nothing. What we need done in our lives, and what we want done in other people's lives, we cannot do. Sometimes we think we can manipulate situations, right? But that doesn't work out so well. And anyways, there we stand helpless. Our only hope lying in the one who basically we've horribly mistreated and not trusted God. Because Jacob clearly had not trusted God entirely, or he would not have deceived his father into getting the birthright. And so now this is the only one who can help us. And we're empty-handed at that point in time. We oftentimes make lists about, like, good Christians, read the Bible more, pray more, this more, that more, and such. And yet, at that point in time, those lists are gone. We can't even hold on to those lists, because they are nothing for us. They have done nothing for us. So when everything is stripped away and we realize it was all just stuff, and the only thing that matters is our connection with God, and outside of that, everything else is, like Solomon said, meaningless, utterly meaningless.
That's kind of where God tries to bring, I think, everybody in the world at some point in life. He tries to bring them to that place where, trying to, like he did Abraham, like he did the children of Israel, like he did everybody, bring them to that place where, right, get it now. I am the only thing that really matters.
Yeah.
Everything else is great. In fact, there were all these blessings that God gave Jacob, and he was trying to strip those away. Even though things that he gave him, he was trying like, I blessed you, yes, I did this and that, but that's all secondary and meaningless when it comes to you really trusting me, because those things will take you over. Those things will consume your life and block God out if you let them, and God like move them all away. They're not bad things. Your lists aren't bad things, but it's when the list becomes more important than, you know, your connection with God and your connection with others.
And same with the birthright. The birthright was by no means a bad thing at all. And yet, the way he went about getting it was not a good thing.
That's right.
So, you know, we're often afraid to go on the spiritual journey with God because it requires leaving our independent selves behind and becoming entirely dependent on God. And so, this is your part.
Oh, okay. Oh, so I just thought it would be, you know, to make things practical, to make things meaningful and useful, you know, it's good to take these stories of the Bible and see how we fit into them. And I thought, well, you know, wouldn't it be interesting if each of us, you know, you just kind of take a moment and, you know, take some moment in some space and look back over your life and think, how many ways can I connect my life, my experience to that of Jacob's? You know, what times in my life have people cheated me or done me wrong? Have I done the same to others? You know, what experiences has God taken me through to teach me, you know, to be dependent on Him? Because, you know, the Bible really comes alive and meaningful when we see ourselves in those stories, and we see, you know, God wrestling with us. You know, when have we wrestled with God and come to, or have we come to a place of realizing everything else is meaningless? This is the only thing that really, really matters, is my connection with God. And then, just like Jacob, you know, from there on, you know, Jacob was blessed, and because his most important thing was his relationship with God. All the other stuff was still there, but it was secondary, not important. It was stuff he used to help other people, stuff he used instead of letting it use him. And, you know, look at those times where God wrestles with us, because those are the times He's trying to teach us the truth about Himself and the truth about us. And the truth about little fluff and stuff kitties. I don't know if you've been able to see on the cameras or not, but one of our cats is sitting here and has been here the whole time, accepting the blessings of our pets.
Yep. She's the sweetest kitty ever.
Yep. Oh, well. Anyway, that was... Oh, there you go. See, there's the HR fluffing stuff right there. She's really the star of the show. Look at that. See, look at the camera. Look at the camera, Fluff. There's the camera. There it is. Your adoring fans. She's like, yes, love me. So, anyway, so yeah, that was our thing for today, and we'll be going around on Monday. Maybe we'll. You should hurry up. Write Salt for next week, and we'll record it out at Dublin.
And I do hope it works out better than this week.
Yeah, so next week you may see pictures and videos from our trip to
Dublin.
I wish it was 3. I could remember the other days. If you know anything about Texas, you know, tell us what are the things to do in Dublin and surrounding areas, because that's where we're headed. Because we don't know anything around Texas much.
No, I think isn't that the town where the oldest operating Dr. Pepper factory is, and it was started in the late 1800s.
Which you'd think would be Waco.
But it wasn't, apparently.
But you'd think it would be, because Waco's a big Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, but apparently there's another Dr. Pepper museum in Dublin.
Yep. Not that I'll be drinking any of it.
They're the only factory anymore, apparently, that makes the actual cane sugar Dr. Pepper.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you know, again, watch Salt. You get useless information to enrich your life. So, you know, all sodas used to be made with cane sugar. And the problem with cane sugar is it's a little more expensive, but it's also tougher on the machinery. It gets sticky and gummy. And so, you know, it's a little tougher to manufacture So everybody went to corn syrup because it's so much cheaper and so much easier on the machinery. But there's a definite taste difference, and so I guess that's been probably 15 years or so. But some of the soda companies started going back and like, well, here is our original version with pure cane sugar. Like RC Cola came out with RC Draft, and that was their pure cane sugar. Coke ended up Mexican Coke is still made with pure cane sugar, and so you can buy Mexican Coke that's like that instead of the corn syrup. And you should taste test it sometime. It really is a difference. Mm-hmm. What do you know? You don't even nothing with corn syrup passes these lips.
Well, not
nothing
anymore, but it's not as though I didn't used to have some corn syrup.
Well, yeah, in her ancient past, but no, for 20 years now, nothing but pure, unadulterated, organic goodness.
Oh, wow. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a while. Well, occasionally I get diet soda, but I only drink enough to eat whatever. If we eat out somewhere, then I have to get a diet soda now. I've never liked diet soda. It is better than it used to be. My brother loves, I don't know, Craig drinks diet soda all the time. It's been interesting that I didn't have soda, has not been part of my life for over a year.
It's true. He drinks flavored sparkling waters instead.
Yes. Yummy. And Dasani.
Yay.
The only water quality enough for Miranda.
Well, it tastes better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. If I go to a place
it's not
not
smart,
Walmart water.
It's not smart
water is really good. Yeah.
But everyone has a budget, so.
I think we've descended into rambling.
Yes, it's time to tell the good people goodbye. So if they come back and see us again next week.
Yeah. So we promise not to ramble much, but rambling's fun.
For us.
All right, well, thanks for joining us. And again, next week, I don't know what we're talking about, but it will probably be infused with pictures of our trip to Dublin and surrounding area, and possibly even some Dr. Pepper, historical
memorabilia.
Yeah. All right, so have a good rest of Sabbath and a great